So Tony Blinken, for example, is now the Secretary of State. He will be until January 20th, God willing. And his views are completely at odds with those of the incoming president, completely at odds. And he's working hard to undermine the incoming Trump administration in Ukraine, pushing to get Ukraine in NATO or some insane thing like that. He plans to retain his security clearance. He's hired a lawyer to argue the case if it comes to that. I happen to know. Why, on what grounds could Tony Blinken, even if you thought he did a good job as Secretary of State, which I want to say, once again, I don't, but like, why does he have a right to a security clearance when he leaves federal service as an appointee?
Well, nobody has a right to it.
Right.
And again, the DOD and whatever the home agency is where your clearance is, quote, being held, have an absolute right to grant, revoke, or not issue a clearance. And certainly a president, if the president decided this person does not need access to classified information, it would be unusual for a president to sort of name somebody like that. But it's within, as far as I understand, it's well within his authority to say this person doesn't need a security clearance. And the person would have to be able to articulate, even if a president wasn't involved in making a decision like that, the person petitioning to get a clearance or to keep it would have to have a reason that's actionable and to the benefit of the government to do so. I'm not aware of the specifics of a former cabinet level officer trying to keep a clearance. I would imagine if the new administration said that they didn't approve it or concur, that it's essentially an unreviewable decision. Probably it's being Washington, you could probably find an attorney who would take your case on. But, presumably, even if you had a clearance, they don't have to actually give you any access to anything. Just because you have a clearance, it isn't a badge that allows you to get into a physical place and access data. Somebody still has to proactively check that you have a clearance and then brief you.
Right. But the reason I think that it's significant is because it sets up legal penalties for the transfer of classified information to you if you don't possess a clearance. So in other words, if you're Tony Blinken and you leave January 20th and you want to continue to undermine the administration, which he does, you can remain in contact with your former employees at state or throughout the U.S. government, your allies, and receive classified information and no one's breaking the law. But if you don't have a clearance, then you could get John Kirakud for it. So,
and again, an administration has broad authorities about who can have a clearance, and just because a former official wants one, they don't have a right to keep it.
If you're still using Verizon, AT&T, or T-Mobile, obviously our condolences, but you're going to want to hear this. Our cell phone company, Pure Talk, gives us the exact same service you're currently getting from those big companies, but for half the cost. Not a joke. There's no reason to spend $85 or $100 per month per person on your wireless bill. Now you can get unlimited talk, text, and 15 gigs of data with mobile hotspots for just $35 a month. You don't have to be a math major. The average family of four saves about $1,000 a year with Pure Talk. You enjoy America's most dependable 5G network, support small businesses. We would know that because they are now powering TCN and can probably save you money too. So cut the fat out of your wireless bill, switch to Pure Talk by going to puretalk.com/Tucker. You'll save an additional 50% off your first month. Pure Talk, America's wireless company. I'm hardly an expert on CIA. I am an expert on elected officials in D.C., and they're all afraid of getting killed or blackmailed. They think that the intel agencies will kill them. They actually think that. I don't know if you're aware of that. I'm aware of that. So they think that. Why do you think they think that?
That wasn't my experience, working with, Oversight when I work with them. I've simply just never heard anybody say that to me.
I had a member of the an intel committee, elected official, tell me that he was on the Oversight committee, overseeing the IC, that they were spying on him, that they were reading his texts and listening to his calls, and there was nothing he could do about it. And I said, why don't you hold a press conference? I mean, that's like so outrageous. It's illegal. I can't do that. You saw the chairman of the Senate Intel Committee violated some agreement the CIA thought that she had with them, and they spied on her. They spied on Senate staff. They got caught, and no one right? So, and actually the Senate didn't do anything about it. They didn't say, we're going to expose your black budget or, defund parts of you. We're going to fire you. No one did anything. So what does that tell you? If the agency can spy on sitting senators who are supposed to be in charge of them, or their budget anyway, what does that tell you about how afraid people are?
So let me take this in reverse order.
Yes.
So I think you're talking about the Feinstein
That's exactly
statement.
Right.
So as my understanding of how that happened is that they accused the agency of being able to look at the computers.
Correct. In the Senate.
That were in the CIA building that the Senate staff had access to. And that they were government computers with CIA information on it. And that all of those computers come with a warning, both written on the cover of the computer and when you boot it up, that this is a government system and it's fully auditable. So it's my understanding that the computers in question, that Senator Feinstein said were improperly accessed by the agency, were in fact, CIA computers that were made available to them, but with the clear warnings that anything on this computer that you do, not some other computer that you would be on, not your personal handheld device, those computers are accessible by CIA security, just like every other computer that the CIA buys and makes available for its own employees. So that there's an audit function on all of that. Now, I had never heard, that the allegations ever extended to other computer systems that people in the Senate were using that were not provided by the CIA. Now, again, I'll caution that I wasn't directly involved in that.
I'm pretty sure that Senator Feinstein said and alleged that CIA was spying on her staff in order to push back against her expected pushback against them. In other words, to control her.
I was aware she said that. Again, my understanding is the only, audits that were going on of any computers were ones that were clearly marked as this is a computer owned by the government subject to audit. So I can't speak to, what I can't speak to is never in my career did anybody ever approach me and say anything about
spying on members of Congress.
Never. No one ever asked me to do it. No one I know ever told me that they were involved in it. And it's a fairly small place.
Right.
I'm not saying that.
So if a member of a Congressional Intel Oversight Committee says, I believe CIA or NSA is spying on my personal communications in an effort to control me, do you think that's a crazy thing to say?
I think it's troubling if any member of Congress believes that.
Not only believed it, well, I think the person believed it, told me in a restaurant. But I said, that's like completely outrageous. And actually, you can't have a democracy under those circumstances. So you should hold a press conference and say, I can't do that. So really, to me, it's unprovable whether or not they were spying on his phone. Maybe he's a nutcase. He's a pretty famous person, but could be a nutcase. But what I was struck by was the fear, like, I can't do that.
And that's, I would say, what you've just told me, that would be, if I was still in government, that's the thing that would trouble me.
Yeah.
Is that if our relationship with our oversight has reached this sort of a level where they would entertain that type of a
where CIA is more powerful than the people overseeing CIA. That's not good.
I mean, again, in all my interactions when I would go down and testify or provide, background briefings to Congress, it was always with the understanding, that the CIA has an office, that deals with collaboration and oversight. It was always like, you've got to make sure everything you say is accurate. If you say something that's not accurate, you've got to come back and explain that you got it wrong, that you submitted something that was, in error. It was always deferential in my level and with what I experienced. But if I had become aware that, a senior senator had said something like that or a congressman at any level, I'd say we definitely have a problem. We need to reestablish trust.
Well,
however it has to happen. And if somebody had ever told me that we're spying on, congressmen, I wouldn't have followed an order like that. And most of my friends that I know who were there wouldn't have followed an order like that.
I never believed any of this stuff. And then the closer I got to it, the more I thought there's something really wrong here. And that the Almost without exception, the members of Congress who are the most vocal cheerleaders for the IC are the ones with the most to hide in their personal lives. I've definitely noticed that theme. Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. We hope you'll subscribe to it. And by the way, you can hit the little bell on there and get notifications every time we produce a video. We hope you'll do that also.